It's going to be exciting to see how this one changes in a year. I think that
Dude, there's so many MarTech solutions like popping up around. And to be honest, like,
you are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Indepreneur.io.
What's up, indies? Welcome back to Creative Juice Podcast. I am Corrin Campbell, your co-host, and with me is Jack. Jack, how are you doing today?
How's it going? It's going great. Just kicking into another lovely week, living the dream, you know?
Yeah, it's just a funny time in our society, you know, and I think there's been a lot of things that have opened my eyes to things that I need to educate myself about and ways that I can, you know, just evolve in my thinking, right? Like as a musician, as a person, obviously we never want to stay stagnant. If you're listening to the Creative Juice podcast, you're probably one of those people. You're trying to learn things to better yourself in your music career, or you just love the sound of our voices, but I think it's probably the former. So I think we wanted to come into this episode with that mentality in mind, right? But more specifically about music marketing, obviously, because, you know, that's what we talk about here. And I would say that there have been a lot of things that I've said on the podcast in the past that, like, listening back now is a little bit cringeworthy. I'm like, why was that documented in time? You know, and we change over time. And so I think I personally am excited because in this episode, we're going to be talking about the things that we formed a very hard opinion on, or maybe had a soft opinion. Most of mine are hard. And, that we've had to come around to a different line of thinking. So I'm actually stoked on this. And, you know, Jack, would you call it the same thing? Like for you, is it that you're changing your mind, or is it that you just are finding a new way of doing things? Like, how do you kind of look at yourself in this light?
For me, it is, you know, it's a little bit about changing my mind, but more so just being willing to evolve with the reality of the space that we're in, you know, the reality of the digital marketing space for musicians. Evolving in the sense and changing my mind in the sense that I'm willing to be a little more flexible on things that previously I had, you know, held as beliefs that were maybe near and dear to my heart, or maybe just things that I thought were best practices that have since changed.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I think that's something that, I mean, at least from the feedback that we get in email and on socials about Creative Juice, is that, you know, we tend to have pretty, you know, hard opinions, especially Cirque, you know, our former host. So, but the thing that I've always respected about Circa is that when he, he'll make a blanket hardcore statement like, this is what things are, you know, and really state them as fact. And I've always been someone that's like, whoa, you know, and so I wouldn't say that I'm more wishy-washy, but I am, you know, a couple of years older than Cirque. And so my perspective on life is that I thought I knew everything a few years ago. And that has been a statement that I have said since I was 18 years old, you know, is this self-awareness that, you know, my opinion has never stayed consistent. But, you know, when Cirque does have these hard opinions, he's more than happy to come back and say, yeah, well, now the situation has changed and my opinion has changed. And, as Cirque likes to say, Dogma is expensive. And when we make these hard opinions to the point where we're not open to things that are new or different things that we've discovered, and we'd rather just stay stuck in the rut or in the opinion that we have, it just makes you limited. And that's true, I think, in life, but especially in music marketing, because digital marketing changes, the music industry changes, and everything's just kind of so rapid that we just have to remain flexible. So that's why I'm kind of excited for us to, like, do a new get on record, say these things. And a year from now, we'll probably be saying, well,
I was just gonna say, I feel like these kind of episodes might be good to do as like an annual sort of thing, and just come clean with like, what did we say a year ago, and how has that changed now based on things that we've seen, things that we've done, things that have worked, things that haven't worked. And I think for our listeners, it's important to take that kind of perspective with yourself. Take some time every once in a while and just write down like, okay, what hypotheses or beliefs have I held that have been proven true, affirmed, and what hasn't, and what does that look like in terms of my workflow and the things that I plan to do from here? I think that's really, really important to do.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that, I want to kick off. I mean, obviously, I have been on the podcast for the last 100 episodes now, so there's probably a lot of cringeworthy moments in these podcasts that I might be like, oh man,
soundbite.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just kind of to let you guys know, like if you're going back and listening, there is a lot of value in Creative Juice all the way back to episode 1, but always know that if you are listening to a podcast that is from 2 months ago, 6 months ago, or 2 years ago, things may have changed, right? So definitely always just stay up as much as you can, but there's a lot of value back there. So let's get on record with some of the things that we think right now. And what I would like to posit, Jack, is that we start with the items that we've changed our minds about, things that we may have said in the past that we're like, okay, I need to like air this change in perspective on whether it's a tech tool, a strategy, any of those. So do you have one to kick us off?
I do. Yeah. And this is an interesting one that I've kind of held dear over the course of my time as a marketer. And this evolution in my mind just really falls in line with how best practices have evolved, and it has to do with Facebook advertising. And in particular, what I'm going to talk about here is selecting your placements at the ad set level, rather using automatic placements and letting Facebook do the heavy lifting for you. That's something that I over years and years and years have been very reluctant to allow Facebook to optimize in that way for the best performing placement. And if you're familiar with the ads manager, you know that the placement is simply, where within Facebook's ecosystem your ad will be placed. So that might look like the Instagram newsfeed, that might look like the Facebook newsfeed on mobile, on desktop. It might look like the right-hand column on Facebook, which gets a bad rap. It could look like the audience network. It could be your messenger inbox, so on and so forth. They keep on expanding their ad inventory. And more recently, I have been across a number of different accounts for a number of different purposes, just been leaving the automatic placements selected and letting Facebook do the work for me when it comes to
say it ain't so.
Letting Facebook do the work. Truthfully, I'm finding more and more that the machine learning behind Facebook's ad platform is smarter than us. Now,
you don't say.
Now this does come with a little bit of a stipulation, obviously. With anything, it's not black and white, it's gray. But in this case, more often than not, I'm finding that using automatic placements is working really, really well, especially for conversions campaigns where you might be running sales campaigns, or for lead acquisition, for getting opt-ins. I'm finding automatic placements to produce a better result than if I were to narrow it down to, say, just the Facebook newsfeed. And a lot of that has to do with how Facebook actually optimizes based on that placement and spends your ad spend appropriately, and how that all functions. So that's been a change that's been going on in my mind. And, like I said, it's contextual. If you've got an ad creative that just simply doesn't work for Instagram stories, then you might not want to have that one selected.
Right. Although Facebook will pretty much tell you, like, first off, it tells you if it's not compatible.
Totally. Yep.
And if it is compatible, it'll edit it, and it's interesting that you say this because I want to drill a little bit further into it because I'm still kind of on board with the old school. So I'm, which is selecting my placements. I'm a control freak in life, in case that never came across to any of our listeners. But I've always been very into what placements? So are there any situations, Jack, in which you will still manually edit the placements?
Yeah, definitely. Well, when starting out, for example, with say like a fan finder campaign, a video views top of funnel campaign, in those kind of cases, I might know exactly where I want my asset to be placed, where I want to be getting engagement. In that example, it's primarily the Facebook news feed or the suggested videos feed. For that reason, I've got a specific objective in my mind about where I want my ad to be shown. It's not necessarily, primarily concerned here with knowing that the ad is going to perform best there, but knowing that it's going to reap multiple benefits across a couple of different KPIs. I'm looking for stacked engagement that I can then facilitate like a feedback loop. So that's one example of, I'm gonna choose my placement there. Oftentimes, if you don't, Facebook's going to optimize for the one you want anyway. In cases where I haven't done that, and that's kind of where this evolution in thought came from, as well as just keeping in the loop with what's working best for other people, and not just relying on my own personal experiences with campaigns. But that's one example of where I'll kind of dial down right at the beginning of what I want. And then again, like as campaigns are running, it's ongoing optimization. I'm just not setting things and forgetting them. So if a campaign isn't performing well, or even if it is performing well, I'm looking at where your ads are being placed and knowing, okay, this is what's working for me. Is there opportunity for me to double down, and does it make sense to do so? So those might be other areas where I might see something not working and say, okay, like all of my budget is getting placed to, the audience network, for example, and I'm not getting the meaningful conversions that I'm looking for. So, the increased engagement and reach there isn't doing what I intended to do. It's rare that I see that kind of thing happen, honestly, but that's kind of where my thought process lies, as far as being like hands-on and into it, but not being to the point of where I'm tinkering for a worse result.
Right. And I think that's something that, is consistent with something that we've said for a long time, which is that machines are smarter than us. They have more data points than we do. They can see things about these people and these placements that we don't see. So there has to be some kind of assumption, that we're not going to be able to make a very educated decision to change these things, as you see things running. I have, however, so like with video view campaigns, it's always been kind of a assumption on my part, based on looking it up 2 years ago and never revisiting it, that video views in audience network have they're not retargetable. To your knowledge, is that still the case?
I had heard that as well around 2 years ago, and I believe that is still not the case. However, that might be something worth looking into for sure.
All right. Well, we'll look it up. But that would be one of those situations, right, where you mess with the placements.
Yeah.
Something that has been interesting for me is I've been running a free plus shipping and handling funnel, and I tinkered with that because it didn't do what I expected it to in the first place. And I was adding these different audiences, and I was like, what about this audience? And I'm like, oh, but what if I filter by engaged shoppers? And I was like, okay, well then what if I do this, Yeah. And as I was messing with it, I was frustrated because Facebook wasn't putting a lot of traffic there, because the first ad set, the first audience had been running for longer. And I was like, well, now Facebook's not like feeding enough budget to these other ones to test it. So I duplicated the campaign and started running them all from day one together. and the optimization was exactly the same. The placement was the placement that was performing best was the same. The audience that was performing the best was the same. And so I ended up wasting money because, the campaign had to learn, but it like ended up boiling out in the same way anyway.
Yeah. Yep.
So I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna quit messing with this. And, sometimes you have to wait, especially for conversion campaigns, right? Or opt-in campaigns. It can take 18 to 24 hours for Facebook to really find it. So I've learned to kind of let time go by, even though like we launch those campaigns. I know like every Indian here watches that campaign like a hawk and like wants to pivot and wants to change when they don't see things fast enough. And then we get questions like, how long before I know blah, 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 right? And like, obviously there's no swift answer for that. But chances are like your placements are going to, the most successful placements are going to, eke out in front, and your optimization is going to be feeding more money there. So if you're worried about the placements and Facebook isn't really going to waste a ton of money on that anyway, if you're optimizing for a certain thing. So yeah, I think that that's something that I've kind of learned over time is like, okay, I need, as much as I'm a control freak, I need to let the machine do its job.
Totally. The philosophy I try to live by when I'm launching new ad campaigns is like, launch it, look at it, and don't effing touch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Let it be for 2 to 3 days, and live with that. Live with the results that are coming in before you try to make swift decisions about what is and what isn't happening.
Right. Absolutely. Something else that I have kind of changed my understanding about the ads platform is that there's something that's it's a phenomenon that has now occurred several times while I've been running ads. And it's that you turn the campaign on and it's like, bam, 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 and you get all of these results. And then it's like dead silence for 18 hours. And I used to be like, oh crap, like Facebook found exactly the 6 people that were willing to do this thing. And now they're all gone, And so then I would shut it off and I would change it because I thought that the audience had fatigued already, or that it was kind of a poor targeting, from the get. And it's like, no, like, I think that Facebook does kind of pick the low hanging fruit. The machine is able to be like, all right, I know John is going to do this because he does everything that falls in this category. So they find John, but you have to like let it actually filter out longer than that. So if you're running an ad campaign and you get like 6 results within the first few hours and then it doesn't do anything for a day and a half, it doesn't mean that you should shut it off. And so that's something that I've had to change about my thinking. Again, a control freak problem. But I think that's something that I've had to shift my thinking about as well and try to like zoom out and really, especially with indies running kind of the budgets that we deal with. We're not companies that are running hundreds and thousands of dollars a day. So learning takes longer.
Yeah.
And I think like that's something that we have to, kind of learn is that as great as the machine is, it needs a certain amount of budget and a certain amount of, people that it's touching and coming in contact with before it can really learn to find the people to do the thing that you want them to do. So video views are obviously, a little bit easier. So, the deeper in your buddy system that this particular objective lies, the longer it's going to take for you to see what the machine can really do with it. So, don't panic, just leave it.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a misconception that people sometimes have when they see those initial, let's just say we're running an opt-in campaign. They see that initial spike, those initial 3 signups that come in on the first day, and then on day 2 it flatlines and maybe they don't get anybody. And the assumption that some people make is, oh God, Facebook learned in the first day and it learned that there's nobody else, but that's not how it works.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, being patient and just having that, putting the brake on the control freak tendencies, I think is helpful here.
Yeah, most definitely. So that's, ad platform stuff. I mean, something that when we first came up with this idea for this episode, I was like, all right, I know that there's something that I need to get on record. And I've kind of mentioned it over the past couple episodes, but Mailchimp is, I've been dealing a lot with Mailchimp because obviously Indepreneur has been using Mailchimp basically for the entire life of the company, except for when we were built on ClickFunnels and we had some things going out through ClickFunnels emails. But other than that, it has been, Mailchimp running a lot of our engagement series, our re-engagement series, our I series, which if you don't know what those are, basically it's like if we're introducing people to the company when they first sign up, if we're educating them about either the thing that they purchased or about something that's relevant to what they purchased, different campaigns like that. So we've been running those in Mailchimp, and for the longest time I was like, no, this is tight. We can run. I just kind of got the lay of the land and I loved it. And then when they had the Shopify integration, I was like, oh, cool. I can track e-com and products. And like, was it perfect? Like, absolutely not. But it was definitely, I thought that it was a good solution for most indies at the price point that it was with the capability that it had. And I no longer feel that way. I feel as though Mailchimp has completely degraded their product by attempting to, now they have a website builder and, they started offering landing pages and they have a built-in advertising tool. And now and when I look at their pricing scale, I've been, talking with a lot of founders. We're running an affirmation splinter, a permission splinter, and we have two of the standard founder foundations sessions running right now. And the founders who are not on Mailchimp currently are like, this pricing is bonkers. I'm like, what are you talking about? It starts at, whatever. But you have to have a certain, the amount that you have to pay now for Mailchimp to even do just email people and email them in a way that is smart, essentially. Their Shopify integration is broken. I am completely retracting any support that I ever issued Mailchimp in the past because I think that it's cost prohibitive. Their development dollars have been spread too thin. And to me, it's no longer a viable product. Now, there are indies that have been grandfathered in under old pricing, which makes it a little bit more reasonable. But I think that as soon as you start selling things, which is not that long into your music career, right?
Hopefully.
Hopefully are selling things. Once you hit that point, Mailchimp is not a solution because it doesn't track, with a lot of providers, it doesn't track products, it doesn't track LTV, and it's just extremely limited. So I have to pull my recommendation for Mailchimp. Which it breaks my heart because I've been using it since 2009 and they just got distracted and started doing this crazy stuff. So, in fact, Indepreneur is migrating from Mailchimp to Drip now, and Drip does track LTV. It does communicate with your website activity. There's actually a JavaScript snippet that you can put on your website and take actions that even if somebody from the mailing list goes to your site and interacts with your site, you can trigger emails based on their website activity. Drip also will add people and take them off of custom audiences. So if you're retargeting people for a product, or if you are offering an opt-in campaign after a UAL kind of experience, right? They go through this, a purchase campaign. So if they go through a UAL and they don't purchase at the end of this ultimate album launch, not only can you email them, but you can add them to a custom audience for some kind of, some period of time and then have Drip remove them. So it's just super powerful. I've looked at Sendinblue, MailerLite, SendLane, OmniSend, ActiveCampaign. I've literally imported my audience and did a full-on trial of all of these mailing providers because I was like, I need to find something else for indies if I'm going to say Mailchimp is no longer a viable solution. And Drip is what I ended up on. So that's sad for me, especially because a lot of the email marketing training is in Mailchimp, which doesn't mean, we have lots of indies who don't use Mailchimp and love the email marketing training, but they've had to kind of translate and not get exact technical, click here kind of instructions. Instead, they're absorbing the theory and applying it in their autoresponder. So, but I most definitely am going to be wanting to add some lessons to the email marketing training because of the increased capability with Drip. And I've found that when I am running audiences based on LTV, they are very successful. So not having that LTV is, for me, a deal breaker at this point. So yeah, that is something that I needed to change my position statement on because, I can't recommend Mailchimp anymore.
Yeah, it's been really tough. I mean, especially like at IndieX, we work with a number of different clients who use Mailchimp. We work with a number of different clients that use other email marketing providers. And the challenges related to Mailchimp, especially with the pricing changes and with its e-commerce integration, specifically with Shopify, first with that integration getting blown up, and then with ShopSync seemingly as a third-party integration that was working okay, but now it turns out it has some overwrite issues related to customer opt-in, which is just insane.
To further explain that really quickly, basically ShopSync's problem is that if someone goes through your checkout on Shopify and they don't keep that button checked that says, sign me up for marketing or whatever, which we always say, like, you would never ask someone to opt into your list just because, and definitely not for marketing emails, right? So when that box isn't checked, and a lot of people will uncheck that box, you can in Shopify, in your settings, have that box pre-selected, but nonetheless, a lot of people will uncheck that box even if it is pre-selected. So what would result in that is that ShopSync would send the order information to Mailchimp and then unsubscribe or set them to transactional emails only, which really renders Mailchimp basically worthless at that point. So and what that means is that some of your most valuable subscribers, which are the people who are purchasing, are being unsubscribed. So that is the opposite of what I want from an e-commerce autoresponder integration.
And they may not even realize that they're being unsubscribed because they're unchecking.
Most of them don't.
Yeah, they're unchecking a box, at your store, but likely if you're emailing them and actually using your list the way that you should be, they're used to getting emails from you.
Right.
So
chances are they're buying because they got an email from you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? If you're using your list properly. So yeah, it's completely counterproductive. And, I've looked for a while, I was like, gosh, if I could, learn Liquid and get into Mailchimp API, maybe there's something that I could build for indies that, would allow for this and they wouldn't have to use ShopSync. And it just ended up being an unreasonable solution compared to something like Drip or Klaviyo that just does it,
Yeah.
So for the longest time, I was running Mailchimp as my content autoresponder and email provider, and I was using Klaviyo for transactional e-com kind of stuff. And what I found is that because they weren't really communicating send to each other, basically meaning if a person just got an email from me in Mailchimp, don't send them an abandoned cart reminder that very day or whatever. So I didn't like how they didn't it seemed like I was double sending people and kind of being a nuisance. So I was just I just need a solution that does all of it. And for me, that ended up being Drip. So, but yeah, I'm telling you guys, when I started running these campaigns and using LTV lookalikes, which were super easy to import from Drip because Drip really intelligently selected a lot of people and you can filter by all kinds of things like number of orders or total transaction value or whatever. When I was able to start doing that, my campaigns increased productivity 5-10 fold, So for me, that's a deal breaker now.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I think, in addition to the fact that consolidating everything into Drip right now, because we've had clients that are on Mailchimp and Klaviyo as well, and I'm actually in the process of migrating one over this very week. You know, when you're getting up to a certain level of subscribers, a certain number of subscribers, the cost of running, you know, a marketing autoresponder and a e-commerce autoresponder is going to get really expensive. So being able to consolidate them into one platform and save money that way with Drip is really great. And this is starting to sound like an advertisement for Drip.
I know.
But
hey, Drip, if you want to reach out, you know, let us know. Yeah. Sponsored by Drip. We are not sponsored by Drip, just to be clear.
No. But there's definite benefit there. And I'm really excited about it. So something to keep in mind as well is, you know, do some number crunching on, you know, what you've got on your list currently, your customer list and your subscriber list, and how that all shakes out. What makes the most sense for you based on where you're at.
Right. And to, you know, just to be transparent, like Drip is costing me less than Mailchimp was even under the grandfathered pricing for the number of subscribers that I have. So definitely look into it. That's all I got to say. And, you know, I did like, when I tested SendLane, they have SMS marketing. There was a lot of things that were very powerful in that platform, but their pricing was through the roof. And I hated their email builder. So like I can do HTML email, so I wasn't like super freaked out about that. But I know that a lot of indies, you know, they're not going to spend that budget and then have to also learn how to do HTML emails. Like that's ridiculous. So that's why, you know, I might recommend SendLane to certain people, but you know, for indies wide recommendation, yeah, it ended up being Drip.
It's going to be exciting to see how this one changes in a year. I think that
there's so many MarTech solutions like popping up around. And to be honest, like I have found that it's kind of easy to read when there's a platform that's trying to be too many things. And I know like we're all looking for ways to minimize cost in our tech stack, right? And minimize bloat, right? Which is having multiple things in your tech stack that do the same thing. But like Squarespace is offering email campaigns now. I'm like, nah.
Stop it.
Shopify is offering email campaigns now. And I'm like, you know, don't you guys do enough? Like just stick to what you do, you know, and be really good at that. And don't spread these development dollars around. Now, Shopify has enough money to, you know, like really develop some cool stuff. And so maybe there'll be something there. That might be something that I will change my mind on in the next, you know, few months to a year. But as of right now, I'm like not into the emails that are coming from Squarespace or Shopify.
I think the problem that crops up when it comes to the easy button or the all-in-one platform expansion that we see a lot of is on the surface, they often look like they will do the things that we need. But then when it really comes down to the level of granular customization that you want when it comes to crafting a customer experience, that's where they fall short, is when you're trying to do something that you know is going to be really meaningful, you can't do it. And then you're like, well, crap, I need a dedicated solution so that I can do the thing that I want to do, that I know is going to help my business.
Right.
That's where I find, you know, it's the broad strokes get it right. Yeah, you can send an email campaign. Great. You know, awesome. But when it comes to really getting into the nitty gritty of things, I think that's where they really fall short.
Right. And you can really kind of unveil what platforms are not being efficient for you if you have to run like a million zaps between items it's like, see where the breakdown of those features are, right? What are the two limits between these two? And there are some things that you're going to run zaps for so that you can do things more intelligently. And that's fine. Like that's what Zapier's for. That's why we love it, you know, but when it comes to identifying pieces of your tech stack that may not be the best solution for you, I think looking at your Zapier account is a really good place to start, because if you have to zap every single purchase, or if you have to zap every single email reaction, there were things that I was doing in Mailchimp Basically, I was sending information from Mailchimp to Zapier and going back to Mailchimp so that it would do the thing I wanted it to do. That's a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
If I can't even do the things in the platform itself, let alone between two pieces of my tech stack, that's a red flag for me. So that's a good way to evaluate if your tech stack is something that, maybe you need to look at a position statement change and, consider things that are going to do those things for you that are not Zap reliant.
Totally.
Yeah. So do you want to go next, Jack? Do you have another one that you'd like to share?
I do have another one, and this is ironically perfectly timed. This is email marketing related,
Nice.
but not about tech, and more so about strategy. So just to give you guys a little bit of background on me and my approach to email marketing, and a lot of the clients that I work with and indies that I work with can attest to this, is I'm a very big fan, always have been a very big fan of plain text email marketing. I'm very much about the 16-point font, not a lot of fancy logos, not a lot of fancy imagery, not adding in things to your email campaigns that will distract your fan or your customer from taking the action that you want them to take. Now, I still hold firm to that in a lot of circumstances, but where my position has evolved a little bit is I have opened up to, a little more of decoration in your email campaigns, adding in, more images, adding in videos, adding in creatives that are going to dress up those campaigns and make them a little more enticing potentially to fans, and not to steer away from the direct response nature, which is really where my position about email marketing falls, is because I'm so heavily focused on email being, a direct response kind of channel that I want it to do a certain thing. I want each and every email to achieve a purpose and not be distracting, have an objective, not get people lost like they might when they are browsing your website or looking at your online store and just shopping around. I don't want emails to function that way. Not to mention the technical issues that can come about when you overload email with content and you blow up somebody's inbox. That's not really the main focus. It's more about the objective. But my position has changed a little bit as I've been, working with different artists here at IndieX. Seeing really great looking emails from brands that I like that are still, applying the same direct response kind of concepts and still getting an action out of me, but the emails don't, the emails aren't just a simple plain text email. So there's been things that have come across my swipe file that I've been like, oh, like this looks cool and still got my attention, and it's a little more decorated. Oh, look at this image that's in it. Oh, there's a video embedded right in the email. That's pretty dope. I'm going to watch it right here on my phone. So my position about email marketing and how you craft your emails has changed, or softened, I should say, to being a little more open-minded about how you can get creative with it.
Yeah, definitely. Something that has shifted for me in kind of the same vein is I was never a fan of the super signature, which is something that Circa, I know, it's something that Circa recommends. It's something that I know, Jack, even just the reaction you just had.
I'm just intrigued. I'm just intrigued to talk about this one.
Well, because here's the thing. I've always been of the mindset that's like, look, when you send a fan an email, don't give them too many places to go.
Sure.
Like I have worked with, back when I was still in IndieX, I was working with clients who would they'd be like, hey, here's this piece of content. And also, we've got this new merch in the store and we're doing this. And it's like, I would rather you email more frequently than put all of this crap into one email, because if they decide to take action on the first thing, they're going to miss the other stuff. Like, what are the chances that they're going to come back to your email and be like, oh, what did I miss?
Sure.
So I've always been so for me, the super signature was something that could distract from that.
Right. I gotcha.
So, that was always why I was always like, look, I only want one thing in an email, period. And recently I was like, well, okay, I'll try it. Because
as all things go.
Yeah. Well, I'm running a TuneSpeak contest, right? So one of the things that people can do to get points in that contest is opt in for the mailing list. And, obviously the first thing that I do when I get that weekly export of the people who opted in for the mailing list is I send them a welcome email, of course. And I don't want to put sales stuff in there. Like, I don't want to just graduate them and assume something about where they are in the buddy system. And of course, I am filtering for people who are brand new to the list, right? So I just want to welcome myself. And, some of these are coming from TuneSpeak's ecosystem. They weren't necessarily a fan of me and then went there because they wanted to sign up for something I was offering. TuneSpeak is really great about finding fans of campaigns that they're running that are similar to you or may have audience crossover. So they send out emails once a week that are like, hey, look at this campaign or look at this. I mean, they don't call it a campaign. They're like, look at this contest, look at this artist. They're doing this, And so I've actually acquired a lot of new people who are passionate about rock music or, whatever. So it's definitely been a situation where it's like, I don't want to make a direct sales offer or a direct action offer, but I do want them to know, like, you're on my list now, and here's a bunch of other things if you're interested. And then I even have in the super signature, PPPPPS or whatever it is. If you signed up just to be in the contest, like totally unsubscribe right here. And I put that right in the email. I don't put it in the footer. I'm very forward about it because that's going to be a thing, right? I'm giving away merch that's relevant to my brand, but I'm also giving away a $100 Amazon gift card. So there could very well be people who are like not actually interested and like, that's fine. I'm not going to be mad about that. That's part of running a contest. It's always going to happen. So I started including the super signature just to test it out, right? And have this like kind of soft presentation of like my Gilded experience, which is free, the CC points, which is my like loyalty program through Facebook Messenger, which is doing great things for me as well. And I can't remember the other thing that I included. I may have included a free plus shipping and handling funnel in the third piece of the PPS. That's what that would be. And it's amazing how many people click on that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so I have to change my position on the super signature because it's actually been really powerful for me in this last little bit. And it's even started, so I started integrating it into my regular campaigns, and people on my mailing list that have been there for years, like they just forgot, like I invited them to the Gilded experience and then they never went through it. And I don't rag people constantly like, I launched this thing, sign up for it, do it. I pretty much let them know one time. So the super signature is a great way for people who maybe are interested in the thing that you sent in your email, but there's other stuff that they kind of forgot or maybe missed. And that has worked really well in my campaigns. It's resulted in sales. It's resulted in further engagement. So I definitely recommend the super signature. I'm kind of willing, if I put stuff of enough value in there, I think that it's worth, risking that they might read all the way to the end and decide to do something else than the primary action that email is serving.
It's interesting that both of our positions on these things came from a place of not wanting to distract people from, distract fans from the message, the objective of the email. My stance was, I don't want to pretty up the emails for them to get distracted and make quote unquote beautiful newsletters that, don't serve a real purpose besides just looking nice, and they don't really work. Yours was, I don't want to include a super signature because I don't want them to be distracted from the core message of the email. So it's interesting. That's really, really cool that we were kind of aligned on different ideas for the same reason.
Right. Yeah, because I've always had pretty emails. I haven't always done like background colors and, fancy headers, but I have always had at least a Bitmoji in there. I've always had images, plenty of links. So it's definitely something where, they always have said like, oh, well, that could impact deliverability. And so there was a period of time where I was where you are, Jack, for a different reason, where I was like, I'm not going to make pretty emails because they may not be delivered. And I think that that's kind of evolved, right? It's still a thing. It's still a thing to be cognizant of. But I think, like email recipients are just getting more privy, right? Servers are getting more privy to the fact that HTML is a very normal standard, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's spam or promo,
Definitely.
So I have seen better delivery rates to cold audiences with any HTML templates over the last 2 years. It's improved. And obviously, once someone's on your list, it can definitely, if they whitelist you, you're good to go. So, but that's something that I shifted my mindset on. And my emails are all very pretty and branded purple and have all kinds of stuff in them now, because I do think that now that it's not a deliverability issue, it is enhancing the experience of being on your list,
Totally. Yep.
So yeah, that's something that I've changed on as well.
Very cool.
So let's see. Something else that I've changed my mind on is I've always thought that ClickFunnels was worth what it's worth, right? You guys have heard me. I'm not a fan of ClickFunnels. There's definitely no doubt about that. And I feel like I've given it a fair shot.
I have no guesses where this one's going, so I'm just bracing myself.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, oh, don't worry. I haven't changed my position on ClickFunnels. I still think it is broken, and there are great alternatives out there. Shout out to Thrivecart, because Thrivecart has been making me a crap ton of money in the last few weeks since I started running on there. So, but my point with that is that with ClickFunnels, I always thought it was kind of gimmicky. I hated that it was like, go to this page and buy this thing, and then buy this thing, and then, oh, do you want to buy this thing? I get the point of a funnel, right? And I understand the value of that. And so that's why I was like, okay, I'll try ClickFunnels. But I still didn't like the communication of it, right? And I think a lot of musicians feel this way. They're like, gosh, it's just so markety, right? And so even though I understood the value of a funnel, I still didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I was willing to do because I just thought that it was gimmicky. And once I started working with Thrivecart, which I liked the interface better and it's less broken. So I definitely still prefer it to ClickFunnels. But once I started doing stuff in Thrivecart, I was like, gosh, this is really great, and I started sending people like, I had a product, I had an order bump, I'm developing an upsell. I need a better upsell, but I started to really get warm on an actual funnel for the first time, because I think a lot of you on this podcast, you've heard me say like, yeah, funnels are great, but I never really owned it. I just kind of knew that in fact it should work.
I believe funnels should be great, but I haven't experientially felt that.
Yeah. And that's something that I should probably admit is that, for the longest time, I tried Zipify for Shopify, their one-click upsells and their sales pages. And I tried to simulate it in Squarespace, which actually Jesse has a ground report on doing funnel-like activity in Squarespace and using Shopify buy buttons, which is in the Indie Pro section if you're a pro member. But, it was something that I was lukewarm on, even though I knew like it would work for other people. I just didn't want to do it. Now, Thrivecart is making me a crap ton of money. And this funnel process is working really well. And I'm actually, to be honest, I'm shocked. I am shocked at how well it's working. And I've totally kind of shifted my mindset. I think that if you do it well, if you do it with intent, the offer is very clear before they get there, so that it doesn't have to feel salesy at that point. It doesn't have to feel gimmicky. And that's worked out, and changed my mind about using funnels in my sales strategies. So that's, I got to go on record and say that. Even though
that's super cool.
I'm going on record with two things, right? I'm going on record admitting that, like, even though I know funnels have worked and I've talked about it on this podcast, like I wasn't using them. And now, so I'm also, yeah, I know. So now I'm also going on record saying, okay, I'm using them. And, you know, even if you're an artsy musician and you don't want to get super markety with things, right, as people say, they work. They work, and you can make them pretty and make them sincere. So that's my position statement on that as of now.
That's super cool. You know, I think there might be a teachable moment in here just in general about like when you as a musician, as a marketer, when you feel that a strategy doesn't fit you, sometimes you just haven't found the right kind of tech that fits your use of that strategy or how you want to do it, right? You didn't dig ClickFunnels for all of the reasons that you don't dig ClickFunnels.
I still hate it. Yeah, exactly.
But finding functionality with ThriveCart and being able to use that to accomplish the goal using a funnel, kind of a checkout funnel architecture, is doing, what you wanted to do, and it's kind of opened up that space for you, which I think is really cool. And I think that can be applied to all sorts of different dogmas that we hold on to about how we feel about strategies and ideas.
Right, because that statement that Dogma is expensive, the fact that I was so resistant to funnels and now it's bringing in all this revenue is like, gosh, well, if I'd gotten over myself and tried, a little bit harder, just tried a little harder, it would have worked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I've been missing out on revenue all this time, which is, it's fine, right? I'm not mad about it, but it's definitely something where I was like, I got in my own way. And guys, I've been marketing for over 10 years, not just for my music career, but for, big, corporate stuff. And like, I should have known better, but that self-discovery process was super valuable for me. And I think that you can kind of look at, if you have a fixed opinion about, something being salesy or gimmicky, or feeling like you can't really develop a certain tool to feel authentic to you. I mean, part of it's the content, right? Like, how do I come off sincere with this? But it might just mean like, go try another piece of tech and see what that unlocks for the vision. Because for me, the capability of ThriveCart really unlocked for me a vision of like, okay, I could see this. I can see it, like it could work. And I was able to make something that felt sincere. So it's not even just about tech integrations and capability of a tech stack, but just maybe the way that something is laid out will inspire you differently. So I think I definitely recommend that if you feel stuck in a piece, like it might be how that piece of tech is set up, and go sign up for a trial for something else and see how that impacts you.
Totally. Use that to challenge your assumptions and beliefs about marketing your music. And if you want to dive a little deeper into like, the idea of being salesy, like Corrin and I have talked about on this episode, go back to episode 92. Cirque and I have a discussion on that's called "Is Selling Music Evil?" And it kind of dives into the psychology of sales and some of the misconceptions that we have, that we talked about in our episode about the artist plight of advertising as well. So hopefully, kind of using those three episodes as a trilogy of unpacking your misconceptions about selling, about strategy, and about tech. Can be, enlightening and hopefully move you forward.
Right. And this is a major focus. So if you're looking at ways that Indepreneur can help you with this in a more succinct kind of way, we have a few things. There's obviously the Indie Founder Permission splinter, which talks about it. We're not just talking about how to get opt-ins. We're not just talking about running the ads, right? We are helping indies find who their brand is, what their customers are interested in, what kind of lifestyle things that are in a very genuine place for them. And that's been, I know we talked a lot about permission already, but that's something that has been just amazing to see people unlock the things that they actually care about and that make their marketing fun for them, and really help them develop things that people can opt in for that aren't 3 downloads, right? That are actually something that is an interest that you share with them and they feel so much more You're making yourself vulnerable. They feel like there's a more intimate relationship with this artist, and they care about you in more than just the music. So that is something that, if you're thinking about like, how do I make this sincere? That's something we have. The Indie Founder Affirmation session, we just opened session 2, and it's half sold out, but we talk about basically kind of the same thing, like not just products, like how do you get deeper than a t-shirt with your logo on it? How do you get deeper than t-shirts? How do you get deeper than apparel, right? What designs go with your brand, with the people who love you, the things that are true about you? What kind of things can you sell that basically deepen your fans' investment in who you are as a person, which will make them love your music more and make them support you over the long term, right? So those are things that I'm, super excited about. And Jack, I think we're looking at late August, early September, but Jack's training on permission, which is a whole thing about, obviously there's stuff about ads and there's stuff about setting up the tech, but there's also a lot of theory that is going to be very focused on, again, sincere, genuine, authentic, like vulnerable. Are you guys catching kind of a trend here? Like how, like we're trying to help. And, obviously all of our founder sessions and our trainings are very focused on like how to help indies get over the hurdles that we actively see them struggling with every day in the Indie Pro group, in the Indies group, in our, in our actual training, in our courses, through email feedback, through social feedback, right? Like we are developing trainings for those solutions. And so if this is an indicator to you, this is something that people struggle with, is how do I market, develop products, develop opt-in campaigns that are sincere and not gimmicky and are fun for me to do as a musician and very organically wrap into the things that I am passionate about in my music career. So if this has kind of been interesting to you, those are 3 ways that you can take action. The founder sessions are at indepreneur.io/services. And the permission training will be available first to Indie Pro members. Again, we're looking at late August, early September, but obviously we'll mention it on the podcast when it's actually available. But that will be in the Indie Pro section before it's available for standalone, which is what we always do for our Pro members. So if you're interested in digging into and preparing for that, obviously you can check out our membership or come and get the training later. So I think that covers my list, Jack. Do you have anything else?
No, that covers my list as well.
Awesome.
And it would be awesome to see, it would be awesome to hear from you guys about the things, once you've kind of done a little bit of a
soul searching.
A little bit of summer spring cleaning on your brain on some of these topics to see, what things in your stack have you changed your mind on? What strategies have you changed your mind on? What have you learned? It'd be awesome to hear from you guys. So let us know.
Yeah, you can message us on Instagram at Indepreneur. We're on, obviously, YouTube with Full Stack Creative. So if you're watching this on YouTube, comment below. I know I'd love to hear from you and, just see what kind of conversations we can start. We're obviously on Twitter, Indepreneur_IO, and then obviously Facebook. So wouldn't it be funny if we weren't on Facebook? We're like, run Facebook ads, and like we weren't. That would be incredible.
Yeah.
So half of our infrastructure is on Facebook. So, but we'd love to hear from you because, again, all of our trainings, our courses, and our podcast episodes are in reaction to the things that indies are asking us for. So if you don't ask for anything, we cannot produce it. We can't even, see that it's something that you need or want. So please do hit us up because I would love for this podcast to be written by indies and something that we can just be of service to the community. So,
Me too.
Yeah, I think that's what we're here for. That's what Indepreneur is for. So anyway, that's our episode, guys. I'm super excited to come on next week. What are we talking about, Jack?
Next week, we are talking about lead magnets and crafting meaningful offers.
Oh, yeah, we're getting even deeper into the permission stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
You can go sign up for those things, or you can tune in next week and maybe you'll get enough to, really feed your permission campaigns. So we'll be back next week to talk about that. In the meantime, have a great week, Indies, and we'll see you then.
Peace.
Can y'all really feel